Okay, YouTube is going, I think. Yeah, hello, YouTube. Great. I think perfect. Facebook is also going. Let's get started. Hey, Facebook. Hey, YouTube. Hey, Instagram to my left. Hope you're having a fantastic week so far. Happy Tuesday. It is 12:12 right now, so 12:12 in the afternoon as I'm recording this. If you're new to this segment, there we go. Oh, my phone's set up. If you're new to these videos here, it's pretty straightforward. This is a weekly segment on basically all my social platforms. So on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, any platform that allows me to do live streaming for the most part. And I answer some of your language learning questions. Every single week, there's a topic that is that's voted on in the Language Learning Nerds Facebook group. I pick the topic that has the most number of votes. I talk about that topic. I give some of my advice, and we go from there. Usually, sometimes we get people that have questions in the during the live stream. So sometimes people watch it live, and they ask some questions that they have as well. And so if there's any questions that happen during the live stream, then by all means, I'm happy to answer those as well. So at any point during this live stream, I encourage you to write any questions you have in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. So today's topic, what we're going to talk about, the topic that got the most number of votes, is how to best learn grammar, new grammar in another language. So I have a bunch of thoughts around this. I have a whole bunch of different thoughts. And I think the best place to start is I think a lot of people try to learn grammar in ineffective ways, in my opinion. For example, some people try to learn grammar purely by studying the theory behind the grammar and practicing the grammar. For example, maybe they're trying to learn the past tense in English. And all they do is they study the rules, they do written worksheets, they do maybe some speaking exercises, they review their notes, their teachers correct them over and over, they're corrected in class, the friends correct them. And overall, what ends up happening over time is you have a pretty good grasp on that grammar tense, and you can communicate, for instance, in the past, and you can do it, but you don't feel very confident with it. It doesn't feel very natural. You often make mistakes and you start beating yourself up over those mistakes. It doesn't quite feel right. So these are the kinds of things that often happen when you only study things in a very academic sense, like only studying the rules, only doing worksheets, things of that nature. So I think there's some problems with that. And I think a lot of people go about learning grammar in that fashion. Some people learn grammar a little bit differently, and some people learn grammar by going an entirely natural approach. An entirely natural approach meaning they simply try to listen to what people are saying, and they try to learn by osmosis. They try to just put themselves in environments where they're surrounded by the target language, and they try to learn by being in a good environment, which I think has a lot of pros to it, and I think can be very good. The problem I find, though, is that one of two things. Either A, some people, they put themselves in immersion style environments and they don't really fully acquire the language. Not really. What ends up happening is they acquire the language to the level that they would need to actually speak in that language. So let me give you an example. My grandma on my dad's side is a great example. She speaks English just fine. No issues with English. You understand everything she says. She understands basically everything of what everybody else says. She's been in Canada for a long time, but her actual grammar is not very good. Her grammar is not good at all. And why is that? Well, it's because when she arrived to Canada and she learned English through osmosis, through being in an English environment, she learned English to a point. She would learn English and she would say things in English that were grammatically very wrong, but you still understood what she said. So she would say, I'll give you an extreme example. She might say, I don't know, I want eat. I don't know, she doesn't talk that way, but I'll give that as an example. She might have said, I want eat. And everybody understood, oh, she wants to eat. So she said, I want eat, and she got food. So her saying, I want eat, gave her food. So in her mind, her brain made the connection. Oh, I want eat is correct. That's what I have to say if I want food. If I want food, I need to say, I want eat, I want eat. And now after being in Canada for years and years, 20, 30, 40 years, and she said, I want eat 10,000 times, all of a sudden her brain thinks I want eat is correct, because when she says it, she gets the food that she wanted. Does that make sense? And she gets to eat. So the immersion and the osmosis and being around that, I think, can be beneficial, and it really can help in terms of your communication, your listening, and it can help. But it will not necessarily automatically give you correct grammar. Not necessarily. So it kind of solves the problem, but it kind of doesn't. The same way that studying grammar in a very academic sense kind of solves the problem, but it doesn't fully solve the problem. So what does solve the problem? That begs the question, well, what the heck do I do, Azren? How do I actually solve it? Well, I think at the end of the day, there's a few things that need to happen. I think one thing that comes to mind is you do need to get lots of input, meaning listening and reading, and you have to pay close attention to how things are being phrased. How are people saying things? You have to listen actively, right? Listen carefully, and you have to see, how are people saying things, and how does that compare to how you say things? In fact, I'm going to simplify, because that's actually pretty complex. I'll simplify life for you. If you have to think about how are people saying things, and then I want you to imitate what they are saying. That's going to immediately solve a lot of problems for you. If you're hearing things, you're listening actively, and you're imitating what people are doing, that's going to help you fix a lot of your grammar. That's going to help you speak with proper grammar. It's not going to help you understand why people are using the grammar they are. It's not going to help you understand the rules. I think the logical part of your brain might not like that. So in the background, if you are that type of person, doing a little bit of study as well as to how the grammar actually works, looking at some of the rules in the background too, I think that will help you. Think of it like I think a good analogy is when you're growing up as a kid. That's a good analogy. When you're growing up and you're a kid, you're 3 years old, 4 years old, 5, 2, 8, however old, you made a lot of mistakes in your mother tongue, in your first language. You made lots of mistakes. You did not speak correctly. But I bet you not one of you, or maybe I would assume all, if not most of you, were not corrected every single time you made a mistake, nor did you study grammar rules. That's not really how it worked. What happened? Let's think about what happened. You said to mom when you're 2 years old, "Mommy, water, mommy, water, water." And mom's like, "Oh, you want water?" And then she would give you water. She didn't say, no, Sam, you don't say water, water. You need to say, "I want some water." Say it. Say, "I want some water." Then I give you water. No, that's not what happened. They repeated back to you, "Oh, you want some water? Okay." And they got some water. And that would repeat itself over and over, and you're surrounded by English. So you would learn by that. You'd learn by your surroundings. But guess what? Sometimes you didn't just learn by your surroundings, did you? Sometimes you did go learn some grammar. For example, when I was growing up, I remember I was probably 9 years old, something like that. My mom told me, "Hey, Azren, when you talk to your grandparents, you don't use the word tu. You have to use the word tame." So tu is like the informal word for you in Gujarati. Tame is the more formal word. And with like your grandparents or people older than you, you tend to use tame. You don't use tu. But with my mom, I use tu all the time. So I was using tu with my grandparents. And one day my mom told me, "Hey, Azren, you can't use tu." And I was like, "Really? Why?" She's like, "You have to say tame." And I was like, "What's tame?" So, tame, you heard tame, right? I was like, "Yeah, tame, I know that." I was like, "What? Wait, what's the difference?" And she explained it. Tame, you use for your grandparents, elders in the family, people you don't know. Tu, you only use with me and your sister. Nobody else. Everybody else is, for the most part, tame. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she explained it to me. And then from that point onwards, I used tame. So she did tell me, one time she told me, "You have to use tame, Azren. Here's why, here's how it works." I was like, "Oh, okay." But she didn't overwhelm me with grammar growing up. She didn't tell me growing up in English or Gujarati or anything, oh, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. Oh, no, no, no. Do it like this, actually. You have to pronounce it like this. Oh, no, Azren, that you don't say yesterday I goed to the store. No, you have to say yesterday I went to the store. No, she didn't correct me, right? Sometimes you would, sometimes, right? Sometimes it's required and they jump in, but not always. So I think a lot of us, when we're learning languages as an adult, I think we have to think back to some of that. And a lot of that is, even though we're learning a foreign language, a lot of those concepts still apply. They still apply. You consistently correcting yourself every time in your mind, or having a teacher correct you for every mistake, it's probably, I don't think it's very effective. It's just not very effective. And sometimes you need that correction. Sometimes you have to go study the grammar. Sometimes it's beneficial to look at the grammar rules, look at the conjugation charts, but obsessing over it is not. So what I want you to do is put yourself in environments where you're able to use the target language. Use French or Spanish or Mandarin or German or Japanese or whatever language you're learning. You want to put yourself in environments with people where you're using the language and you're doing your best to communicate, and you're doing your best to understand what they're saying, and you're doing your best to listen and imitate some of the things that they're saying too. Doing your best to use the right grammar when you can. Just doing what you can, doing the best you can, right? You have to do that. Just do the best you can. And listen carefully to how you said things and how others are saying things. And you might say, oh, I noticed. He said, I went. I said, I go. Oh, maybe it's I went. Okay, next time I'll say I went. Okay, maybe that's, okay, I'll try that. And then you say I went. And in the background, every now and then, maybe you go and study the grammar and do some grammar practice, because that will help you too. And I think that ends up being a very holistic way, a very holistic and complete, very rounded way to study grammar and effectively implement it into your brain and absorb it into your brain. Does that make sense? One thing I'll say, and maybe we'll wrap up this portion of the video here, and then we can move on to any Q&A people have, any question and answers. Something some of you may want to consider is you may want to consider finding a language mom or a language dad. So what does that mean? I'm a big fan of this. I've been thinking about it more and more lately. So a language mom or a language dad plays the same role that your mom and dad had when you were growing up. They have the same, in terms of your language learning development, they play the same role. When you were growing up, the primary people that you learned a language from were your parents. Granted, there were other people too, aunts, uncles, the TV, maybe shows. There were other people too, but one of the primary people, two of the primary people, hopefully, were your parents. Does that make sense? And I think with language learning, you need to, as an adult, you need to implement, I think it's very beneficial to implement the same style, the same mechanism. If you find one or two people that become your parents, quote unquote, and they're the primary people that you are learning from. And these are people that are very encouraging. They're not people that scold you when you make mistakes. They're not people who say, oh, that's not like that. They're not grammar Nazis. They're just warm, friendly people that you enjoy spending time with, that you can talk to, you can converse to, you can have conversations with. Sometimes they might tell you, oh, you should probably say it like this. Sometimes they might tell you that. Sometimes they might do things like that, but generally they're just warm, they're friendly, they talk to you. When you say something wrong, they don't generally correct you. Instead, what they do is they do what your mom did growing up. When you, as a 2-year-old, said, wobber, mommy, wobber, and mom said, oh, you want some water? What did she do? She repeated back to you the right way to say it, right? And then she just gave you the water. You want people that do that. When you say it wrong, it's okay, no problem. And they just say, oh, like when I say in English, if I said, oh, yes, I so tired today. Oh, I'm tired today. Oh, you're tired. Okay, interesting. Why are you tired? Did you see what I did? I repeated it. Oh, I'm tired today. Oh, I'm tired. Why? You can even have them say it again. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, and you say, oh, yes, I'm tired. Oh, okay, I'm tired. Interesting. You want to find people like that. You can find it in a private tutor. Often tutors will teach that way. You might have to do some hunting and some shopping around to find people who are like that, because the majority will not be like that. You might find it in a language exchange partner. The easiest way is, I think you need to do some shopping around. You need to be looking for people, finding different language exchange partners, looking at different private tutors, and just keep trying a whole bunch of them until you find someone who has that kind of personality, and that's just their natural state. I know someone like that in Mandarin. For Mandarin, we're good friends to this day. And she was, in a way, kind of like a language mom, in a way, to me. She was in Calgary for a year, and she kind of was like a language mom for a year. I know when I was learning French, my French exchange partner was like my language dad. And he was kind of like that. He would correct me. He would correct the things I said. He was kind of like a stern dad. Not stern dad, what's the word? You know, those certain parents are kind of more strict. He was a little bit more of a strict dad, but he kind of was like a language dad. For Spanish, my language mom, I had one primary one. Her name was Rosalba. I used to see her every day, and I would just learn from her, and she used to hang out. She used to work at the University of Calgary in this one place where people would go to practice Spanish. And that was her exact behavior. She'd be like, oh, okay. And she'd just talk to you, and very warm, friendly, encouraging. Sometimes would correct you, answer grammar questions I had, but just very warm, friendly lady. And I talked to her 2 or 3 hours a day. Easy, 5 days a week. I used to hang out in that room. It was so fun and enjoyable. So that's something you may want to consider. That will also help with the grammar side too. Okay. If you have any questions, type your questions in the chat now, and I will answer your questions. Let me start with, let me start with Facebook. Anything on Facebook? Yes, I see a question on Facebook. Tips on learning a language yourself and not living in a country where it's spoken. Good question. I can give some tips on that. I would encourage you to do a virtual, I would encourage you to change your surroundings to the best of your ability in the place that you live. So for example, you may change your phone language to the target language. You may follow less accounts on Instagram and Facebook and social networks in your mother tongue, but you follow more that are in the target language. You might listen to less music in your target language, in your mother tongue, but more language in your target language. Wait, did I say that right? More music in your target language. You may change some of your physical environment. You may start to label things in your house. Una silla, una mesa, un lapicero. These are all Spanish, for example, right? Una computadora, and you label everything in your house. That might change your physical environment. You might go out of your way to make some friends that speak the target language, right? So you're looking at right now, you live 100% of your life in your mother tongue, in the country, in the language of your country. Does that make sense? And what you want to do is you want to take that 100% and you want to make it 70%, 80%, 60%. And you want to carve out 20% of your day-to-day life that now is shifted over to the target language that you're trying to learn. Does that make sense? So there's a few tips I can give you. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me see here. Other questions on Facebook? Nope. Oh, is there anything else on Facebook? No, nothing else. Let me go to YouTube. YouTube's quiet today. Wow, super quiet. I see some likes and some people watching, but no questions on YouTube. Great. Let's head over to Instagram. Let me, oh my goodness, there's some plastic on my foot. Look at that, plastic on my foot. Yucky, I don't like plastic. Plastic's no good. Let me look at Instagram. Oh, there's a lot of stuff on Instagram. I don't know if there's any questions though. Let me see. Lots of people joining. It's a habit I have to break, constantly correcting myself. Yes, it is a habit that I want a target language parent. Yes, find a parent, find a mom, find a dad. You need a mommy or a daddy, and not that kind of mommy or daddy, not the kind that some of you with dirty minds are thinking. Okay. Okay, well, it looks like that might be the end of the questions. Only one question today. No problem, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Hope you enjoyed this video. I think it was a good one today. We had some good advice, and I think it'll help a lot of you. And oops, we'll chat later. Bye-bye. See you, Facebook. Let's end you guys first today. Now we'll end YouTube. See you, YouTube. And now we'll end